The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody.
Well, before we get into tonight's stories, I'd like to thank our fellow wanderers, Sarah, John, and Jess, for leaving comments for us on Spotify. We truly appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
And we try to respond when you leave comments for us. At least give a like right away so that we're paying attention. And I'd also like to give a shout out to those of you that purchased our tote bags from TeePublic.
Yes. Now you'll know that they are really, really awesome.
Yeah, and they're really well made. We use ours quite often.
Mm-hmm.
So we hope you like them. And we had a pretty good weekend.
We did. We enjoyed the Battle of Plattsburgh festivities this weekend, beginning with the fireworks, which were really good.
Right, Friday night fireworks.
And then the parade on Saturday was the best it's been in a very long time.
Yeah, marching bands. It was great.
Yeah, it was. And there's reenactors at the Kent DeLord House, which is always exciting to see them walking around and cooking their meals. And
yeah, not as many this year because, well,
it's America 250.
America 250. So a lot of them are other places.
Yes, but the ones that were here, we greatly appreciated.
And they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff downtown. And
so a big shout out to you reenactors.
Yes, especially the cannon being shot off yesterday and today multiple times.
Yes. It does reverberate between the homes.
Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, I do too. It's pretty cool. We also went downtown to see all the things that were going on.
Oh, and in case you're wondering, what is the Battle of Plattsburgh? I guess Beth can give you a brief history on it, so you're kind of in the loop a little bit.
Well, the Battle of Plattsburgh occurred September 1814, even though it's technically part of the War of 1812, which obviously started a couple of years before that. And the British were not too happy about us invading Canada, although we claimed it was because Canada wanted to become the 14th colony, that they wanted to become part of the United States. So we kind of invaded, and the British, who controlled Canada at the time, were like, no. And so they sent their warships and their soldiers to the United States to try to put an end to that. I am oversimplifying, of course. There were tons of other policies and politics involved. I'm watering it down a little bit. But there was a major naval battle that took place on the lake right in Plattsburgh. And there were also ground skirmishes that happened all around Plattsburgh, Schuyler Falls, Beekmantown, all the neighboring towns.
Yeah, it literally happened right outside our front door.
Literally, like 200 feet.
Yeah. There was quite the skirmish here.
Yeah.
And the judge that built our house, well, he was part of the committee that started off the Battle of Plattsburgh.
Celebration. Yes.
Right.
He was on that initial committee in the early 1900s that started commemorating the event.
So it's nice to have some local history pretty much beneath our feet right here.
Right. All around us.
Yeah. Well, I got to say that I know what you're talking about tonight because we had a discussion about it, I think, last week.
Yeah, we did. Because I've been reading this book and I'm very excited about it. Jodi Picoult is one of my favorite authors of all time. And I've been reading her book By Any Other Name. And I highly recommend it if anybody likes to read. So it got me thinking about Shakespeare and some of the controversy around Shakespeare.
It's quite compelling.
It is.
And I think she's onto something.
Yeah. Or the other 88 possible contenders.
Right. Well, with that said, why don't you get us started off tonight?
Okay. So, yeah, in case you're wondering what in the world I was talking about, here we go. So, William Shakespeare wrote at least 36 plays during his lifetime. Some sources even say 39. From the ever-popular Romeo and Juliet to the lesser-known Pericles, it's been said that nothing truly new can ever be written because Shakespeare covered it all.
Or did he?
Somebody did. But ever since the 1800s, some very famous and well-respected people have wondered something completely audacious. What if William Shakespeare didn't actually write any of the works attributed to him? What if everything we think Shakespeare wrote was actually written by someone else? According to biography.com, authors like Henry James, Walt Whitman, and Mark Twain, actor Charlie Chaplin, and even Helen Keller and Sigmund Freud were staunch believers that someone like Shakespeare, who never traveled outside England and didn't leave a single rough draft of anything behind when he died, was not an author. He was an actor, a landowner, and a businessman for sure, but he was not a writer. In fact, according to biography, Wikipedia, Encyclopedia Britannica, etc., very little is actually known about Shakespeare's life, other than he was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, and then he moved to London, where he was an actor, until he moved back to Stratford-upon-Avon, where he died in 1616. He only attended grammar school, and there are only a few of his signatures that have been authenticated. He married Anne Hathaway, and they had 3 children, Susanna, and then twins, Hamnet and Judith. Hamnet died at age 11, and neither of Shakespeare's daughters were educated. Susanna could at least write her own name, but Judith could not. He acted on stage between 1585 and 1592, and he was part owner of Lord Chamberlain's Men, an acting company, which later became the King's Men. He retired at age 49 and passed away in 1613 at age 52. Most of his plays were produced between 1589 and 1613. There is no record of when he started writing, but several of his plays had been performed by 1592. That year, fellow playwright Robert Greene published the following personal attack on Shakespeare, which read, "There is an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers, that with his tiger's heart wrapped in a player's hide, supposes he is as well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you, and being an absolute Johann factotum, is in his own conceit the only shake scene in a country. In other words, Greene was saying that Shakespeare seemed to think a lot of himself, but he was really a fraud.
A pretty eloquent way of putting it.
Well, they did have a great way of speaking in the 1500s.
Right.
When Shakespeare died, he left a 3-page will, but nothing in those 3 pages alluded to any of his plays or his sonnets. He did, however, famously bequeath to his widow his second best bed. He also gave his co-founders of the Globe Theatre, John Hemmings, Richard Burbage, and Henry Condell, each £320, so that they could go buy mourning rings. His property, which was worth quite a bit, was to go to his daughter Susanna, and then to all of Susanna's children, one by one, before it ever went to his second daughter, Judith. But, as I said, absolutely nothing pertaining to his 36 plays or 154 sonnets was mentioned.
Which is weird because you would think that he would have left some kind of trace behind of his writings.
At least some rough drafts of something.
Exactly.
Yeah. But if the theory that Shakespeare didn't actually write any of his works makes you laugh, you might be a Stratfordian. And you're in good company. Scholars all over the world are Stratfordians. But there are those who wonder. And that's what I'm talking about tonight. Over the years, various names have been thrown around as far as who might be the true author of plays like A Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, As You Like It, and yes, even Romeo and Juliet. Names like Christopher Marlowe, Ben Jonson, Francis Bacon, Sir Walter Raleigh, Edward de Vere, Mary Sidney, and Sir Francis Drake. In fact, those are just 7 names on a list of 88 possible contenders. But in 2008, scholar and theater producer John Hudson put forth another name, Emilia Bassano Lanier. Most people have never even heard of Emilia Bassano Lanier, and the idea that a woman could have written Shakespeare's plays might seem downright crazy. Scholars were quick to jump on Hudson, knocking his theory as totally ludicrous. There was no way that a woman, who actually happened to be known by many of the Renaissance's top writers, like Christopher Marlowe, would have been able to keep her identity a secret. But is it ludicrous?
Not at all.
I love when you agree with me. Records show that Emilia Bassano was baptized in London on January 27, 1569. Her father was a Venetian-born court musician who played for Queen Elizabeth I. There is some speculation that the Bassanos were Jewish and practiced their religion in secret. Emilia's father died when she was 7 years old, and she was sent to live with Susan Bertie, the Countess of Kent. There, she was educated in Latin and science. She was reading Chaucer. And records then show that Emilia went to live with Margaret Clifford, the Countess of Cumberland, to act as a tutor for her daughter, Lady Anne. After Emilia's mother died, 18-year-old Emilia became the mistress of Henry Carey, 1st Baron of Hunsdon, the cousin of the Queen. He was Lord Chamberlain and a patron of the arts and theater, and also 45 years older than Emilia. Despite the age gap, Emilia seemed relatively happy, and she lived in luxury. She was introduced to several playwrights and traveled in aristocratic and sometimes royal circles. Lord Carey was married, though, and when Emilia got pregnant at age 23, the Lord paid her off and ended their relationship. Emilia had no choice but to return to her family, and within months she was married to her cousin, Alfonso Lanier. The marriage was volatile. Alfonso was also a court musician who drank heavily and gambled, and they often struggled to make ends meet. Their only child together, a girl, died at just 10 months. In 1611, Emilia published her very first book of poetry, making her the first woman ever to do so in England. Not only was it shocking for a woman to be a published poet, her poems were filled with feminist ideas. Now, fellow writer Mary Sidney had published a play before Emilia published her work, but up until that point, no woman had dared call herself a poet, at least not out loud. After Alfonso died in 1613, Emilia was able to rent a house from a man named Edward Smith, which she then turned into a school. There were some disputes over the rental agreement, which led to Emilia being arrested twice. Once that happened, her reputation suffered and her school ultimately failed. She died in 1645 at the age of 76. So, why do people think Emilia Bassano may have written Shakespeare's plays? Well, to begin with, her family was from Italy, and they were court musicians. But more than that, Emilia would have been part of court life as well, since she was living with both the Countess of Kent and the Countess of Cumberland, plus her 6 years with Lord Carey. People have wondered how Shakespeare, who never actually left England, ever, and was not privy to court life, could have written so accurately about places that he had never been and about things he had never experienced. They also point out that Shakespeare's plays mention court musicians 3 times as often as any of his contemporaries' plays. Emilia would have had that knowledge. In addition, her own poems were filled with feminist ideals, and Shakespeare's plays were filled with strong-willed feminist female characters. Anti-Stratfordians point out that Shakespeare certainly didn't seem to uphold the idea that girls should be educated equally to men, or educated at all, in his personal life, since his own daughters were never taught to read.
See, and that's what doesn't make any sense to me. Wouldn't this man want to educate his daughters for their future?
Well, no. See, that's the thing. In the 1500s England, no, women were not educated equally to men. But the fact that he was writing female characters into his plays who were incredibly educated and went toe-to-toe with the male characters in the plays it doesn't make sense.
Right, but what I'm saying is, rather than, even though women were not educated at that time, wouldn't you still educate your own daughters behind closed doors and teach them? I mean, I imagine I would have back then.
Well, you would think so if he was a writer.
And you cared and loved your daughters. You would want to give them an education.
Right. I think the general population did not feel that way. But because he was an accomplished writer and a well-educated person himself, and they had money, you would think that they would have.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the point I'm getting at.
Right. So Emilia was very well educated, and she, had been taught about science and mathematics and languages.
Exactly.
Right. And then there's the fact that several of the plays have variations of the name Emilia and Bassano. In Othello, for instance, the town of Bassano is mentioned, and Emilia is the wife of Iago, the villain. And in Titus Andronicus, there is an Emilius and a Bassianus. And lastly, there's Bassanio in The Merchant of Venice. So why is he peppering his plays with both the names, variations of the name Emilia and Bassano?
Because he's a fraud.
The Merchant of Venice was published in 1600 and also features the character of Shylock, a Jewish moneylender. Supporters of the Emilia theory point out that she was, in fact, Jewish herself. Are these all just coincidences? They could be. But if not, how or why did Shakespeare publish someone else's work under his name? Apparently, it happened quite a lot. Playwrights often collaborated and revised each other's work. And if Shakespeare was interested in making money, he certainly could have agreed to sell her work as his own in order to make a profit and to make a name for himself. Stratfordians, on the other hand, argue that everything I just told you is pure conjecture and reveals nothing more than 19th century snobbery. Of course, people in the 1800s would doubt that a man like Shakespeare, who didn't travel, couldn't possibly have written the plays. They assumed that he couldn't have been well read and that he had no imagination. In a Penn State University article, distinguished professor of English and comparative literature, Patrick Cheney, argues that Shakespeare was incredibly well read, and he got a lot of his ideas from the books he'd read. Plus, as a member of a royal acting company, he did have first-hand experience with members of court. Cheney also points out that detractors like to say that Shakespeare was the son of just a glove maker, which supports his theory that the people who were suddenly claiming 200 years after his death that he couldn't be the author really were operating from a standpoint of nothing but snobbery. Fellow writers like Ben Jonson was the son of a bricklayer, and Christopher Marlowe's father was a butcher. So saying that Shakespeare's father was a glove maker, who cares? What does that prove?
Nothing.
Right. Shakespearean scholar James Shapiro also brings up a good point. For everyone who says Shakespeare couldn't have written such great female characters because he wasn't a woman, should also agree that he must have also been a murderer, since he wrote such a convincing Macbeth and Claudius. The fact is, there's no hard evidence that Shakespeare himself wrote the plays and poems attributed to him, but there's also no hard evidence that he didn't. Here's my 2 cents, for what it's worth, in case anybody cares. On one hand, I feel like if he really did write the plays, then I think it's kind of crappy that people would try to take that away from him. But on the other hand, if he didn't actually write them, then I do think the real author should get the credit. But unless there's some irrefutable proof discovered somewhere, some journal, something, we're never going to know.
Well, here's the thing. She lived till what? A ripe old age of 76 back then?
Mm-hmm.
You would think that perhaps she would have said something, left something about it, about who she sold plays to.
Well, you would also think, on the flip side, that after Shakespeare's death, she would have continued to write and publish under either her own name or somebody else's.
Well, what if she did and we just don't know about it?
Right.
I mean, if we didn't know about her possibly writing for him, well, then we have no way of knowing if she did continue on writing for someone else.
Right.
So here's the thing. I wonder how well she got paid. I guess not too much.
I can only go by what Jodi Picoult wrote in her book, which is fiction, right? But I'm sure it's well researched. But she was getting like a third of the profits.
Not much.
No. And that was only towards the end. In the beginning, she was just selling them outright for however many pounds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if there were others writing plays for him too, you think somebody would have something written down.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I mean, we know it happens these days.
There's ghostwriters all the time.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of well-known directors, playwrights that are purchasing scripts from other people.
Right.
I mean, your brother had, who is the two famous people that purchased his scripts, but they were never made into movies?
Wes Craven and James Cameron.
Right.
Yeah.
So we know it happens quite a bit.
Well, yeah, but he would have gotten credit for writing them.
Right.
They were just directors.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also some speculation, I didn't go into it, obviously, that Emilia was the Dark Lady referred to in Shakespeare's sonnet. So there's also a little bit of kind of, speculation that he did know her, but there's just as little or just as much proof of her being the Dark Lady as her being the actual writer of his works. So.
Well, I think that just because we think we know something doesn't make it true. That we should always try to delve deeper into things.
Right. And the other thing, sorry, I could go on about this for hours. I promise I won't, though. The other thing is, people will say, well, for 200 years, nobody questioned whether Shakespeare wrote his own stuff or not. Well, maybe because at the time it was common for playwrights to collaborate and to put their name on things that wasn't necessarily theirs. So they didn't make a big deal about it because it was happening all the time.
Right. Just like today with comedians. I mean, God, a lot of them purchase jokes all the time.
Right.
There are a lot of joke writers, and there are some comedians out there that it seems like their entire work is nothing but somebody else's.
Right.
Who knows?
I know.
But it's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, what about the other 87 contenders?
And even if everybody's wrong, and Shakespeare did write his own plays, what do you have to lose by looking into it and maybe opening up your mind a little bit more?
Right. Although, like I said, if he did write them, then, I'd feel crappy if...
Well, he's dead, so he's not going to really know any of this is going on anyway, so who cares?
Well, I know. Who cares?
It's not like he's going to get offended by it.
Right. What were we watching we were watching Discovery of Witches the other night.
Yes.
And Christopher Marlowe is a major character in that.
Yes.
And he was also a major character in this Jodi Picoult book that I had just read. And I had said to you, do you think Kit Marlowe thought for even a second during his lifetime that hundreds and hundreds of years later, he would still be a name that everybody knows, or that he would be a character in all these TV shows and movies?
I know, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
How some are chosen and some are not to be remembered and not remembered.
And if you haven't seen this series, We just started watching it about a week or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, we've been marathoning it. It is pretty good. Also based on books that I read. But anyway.
Well, you've read everything.
Well, not everything. I have a stack next to the bed that's pretty dusty that hasn't been opened, but...
Well, with that said, we'll return after this short break.
Hey, did you know? In 1996, astronomers at the Parkes Observatory in Australia were pretty excited. For days around dinner time, they'd picked up a 2.3 to 2.4 gigahertz signal. Convinced that they'd maybe found evidence of extraterrestrial life, they decided they'd better investigate a little more before they announced anything official. Good thing they did, because it turns out the signal was coming from the downstairs break room's microwave. Who would have thunk it?
All right, we are back from the break. And before I get into my story tonight, I think Beth has something that she wants to share with all you fellow wanderers.
I kind of do, yeah. I made a mistake that I want to correct, which I'm sure a lot of you caught. But I realized it during the break. So during my story, the first time that I mentioned the year of Shakespeare's death, I said 1616, which is correct. But the second time I mentioned the year of his death, for whatever reason, I said 1613, which is not correct. It was, in fact, 1616. So, yeah, I kind of made a mistake.
Wow.
I do make them from time to time.
Off to the giblet with you.
The giblet? Are you going to cover me in turkey parts?
No.
Do you mean the gibbet? See, everybody, I'm not the only one who makes mistakes.
Well, I should have just shut my mouth and got into my story, which I'm going to do right now.
Okay.
The Sayre Mansion in the Fountain Hill district of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, is a testament to the industrial age of America. It was the home of Robert Sayre, a man who was not only the vice president of the Lehigh Valley Railroad, but also the vice president and general manager of the Bethlehem Iron Company, which later became Bethlehem Steel. Sayre was so important to the growth of Bethlehem that he actually has two major areas named after him: the borough of Sayre, Pennsylvania, and the city of Sayre in Oklahoma. Now, I don't think anyone could look at the Sayre Mansion in Pennsylvania and not be impressed by its Gothic Revival architecture. Built almost entirely out of red brick, the massive home is currently a bed and breakfast with 19 single guest rooms and 4 carriage house suites. There are also claims that the mansion has a few ghosts, but I guess that's to be expected, considering the mansion was built between 1854 and 1858, and at least 6 members of the Sayre family passed away inside the house. Bethlehem was a colonial town, founded on Christmas Eve in 1741, along the Lehigh River, a 109-mile-long tributary of the Delaware River. Christmas has always been important in the town. It was the first U.S. city to ever have a decorated Christmas tree, a tradition which began in 1747. During the Great Depression, as a way to raise people's spirits, the town adopted the nickname the Christmas City, USA. But the town also figured prominently in the American Revolution. Back in 1777, during the height of the American Revolution, the Marquis de Lafayette recovered from battle wounds in Bethlehem, and 14 members of the Second Continental Congress met in the town. During and after the war, George and Martha Washington, John and Samuel Adams, Ben Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, and John Hancock all stayed there. A whole handful of famous people were born in Bethlehem, including John, Jeff, and Michael Mario Andretti. Also, Jimmy DeGrasso, drummer for Alice Cooper, Megadeth, and Rat. Actor Jonathan Frakes of Star Trek. Plus a whole bunch of other actors, writers, poets, and sports figures. As of 2020, Bethlehem was the second largest city in the Lehigh Valley after Allentown, and the sixth largest city in the state. But back in the 1800s, Bethlehem was just waiting to become an industrial center, and Robert Sayre was the man who made it happen. According to HistoricHotels.com, Robert Hashem Sayre was born in 1824 in Columbia County, Pennsylvania. Initially employed as a lockmaster for the Lehigh Coal and Navigation Company, it was his job to operate the canal locks. But his real passion was engineering, and his first major project was overseeing the construction of the Morris Canal in New Jersey. But in 1854, he was hired as the chief engineer for the Lehigh Valley Railroad, and since most of his work would be based in Bethlehem, he decided to move his family there. Now, Robert Sayre was married 4 times, and he married his first wife, Mary Evelyn Smith, in 1845. The couple had 9 children, 4 of whom died in infancy. By 1862, Sayre was one of the founders of the Bethlehem Iron Company, which he later became vice president of. The Bethlehem Iron Company later became Bethlehem Steel, the second largest producer of steel in the U.S., which employed over 30,000 workers. They also became the largest shipbuilding companies in the world, and later, after Sayre's time, they also pioneered the creation of the I-beam, which was used in skyscrapers in all major cities. So, needless to say, Sayre was incredibly wealthy, and his mansion was a testament to his wealth. But he was also a philanthropist, acting as a trustee of St. Luke's Hospital and Lehigh University. In 1868, he donated $5,000 to the university so they could build an observatory. In today's money, that would be a little under $114,000. He also funded the Cathedral Church of Nativity. In 1869, Mary passed away of undisclosed causes. Robert's second wife was also named Mary, Mary Bradford. She was the niece of Jefferson Davis. Robert and Mary were married for 6 years, when she too died of undisclosed causes in 1877. In 1879, he married his third wife, Helena Augusta Parker. Helena died just 1 year later. Now, before you all wonder the obvious, was Robert somehow doing in his wife's? Well, let me assure you that he absolutely was not. Despite being a titan of industry, it was still the late 1800s, and there were all kinds of illnesses that were untreatable. Tuberculosis comes to mind. So it wasn't all that uncommon for men to remarry multiple times, and in Robert's case, it seems kind of sad that he went through the loss of a spouse that many times, especially when he had so many children to care for. But I should also say, it's really not that uncommon for a wealthy man, or any man at that time period, to go through so many wives, because they had to have someone there to take care of the children when they were away on business or running their companies.
Right, and women died of childbirth too, and when he's got 12 children...
Who's going to take care of them?
Well, that. And actually giving birth to all those children, even though it was different women, a lot of women died in childbirth.
It's true. By 1882, Sayre had married for the 4th and final time to Martha Finley Nevin. Their wedding announcement read, Mr. R.H. Sayre, Superintendent of the LVRR, resident at South Bethlehem, and Miss Patty Nevin, daughter of Reverend Dr. Nevin, president of Franklin Marshall College, Lancaster, were married at the latter's residence near Lancaster on Wednesday afternoon. They left on an extended wedding trip. That's a mouthful.
Well, lots of abbreviations, but everybody knew what they were talking about.
Right. Together, they had 3 children. In fact, it's up for debate just how many children Sayre had with his 4 wives. Some sites say 12. Others say at least 14. It's known that his youngest son, with Martha, a little boy named Cecil, died at just a year old in the mansion. But the couple's other 2 sons, John and Francis, lived into adulthood. John attended Princeton and did missionary work in China. Francis married Jenny Wilson, the daughter of President Woodrow Wilson. According to Forbes.com, in 1898, Sayre commissioned an addition to his mansion, a massive library with coffered ceilings that, during his lifetime, held 15,000 books and employed a personal live-in librarian. And above that, he built a conservatory of his very own. Perhaps Sayre had always wanted one for his very own, since he donated the money to Lehigh University to build theirs 30 years earlier. Martha Sayre lived to the age of 72 and passed away on Nantucket. Robert Sayre lived to age 82 and passed away in his mansion in Bethlehem in 1907. According to HistoricHotels.com, after Robert's death, his children auctioned off the property, and it was turned into the Lehigh University frat house by 1914. Then, in the 1930s, it was used as an apartment building. Both time and constant new occupants meant that the once grand mansion had fallen into terrible disrepair, and by the 1990s, it was slated for demolition. Thankfully, the mansion was purchased by John and Nora Capilano, who were able to restore the home. And then in 2002, it was bought by Jeannie and Grant Genslinger, who carried on the restorations. The couple used old photographs of the mansion's interior to convert it back to how it once looked when Robert Sayre walked its halls. Today, as I said before, the Sayre Mansion is a B&B that offers 19 single rooms and 4 suites in the former carriage house. Robert's former wine cellar, office, and dining room are still used as a wine cellar, office, and dining room, and most of the mansion is filled with antiques. All 19 rooms are bright and cheerfully decorated. You can sleep in the former library or the glass-roof conservatory, which has a 180-degree view of Bethlehem. Since becoming a B&B, the Sayre Mansion has been listed on the Historic Hotels of America Top 25 list a whopping 7 times. And it seems likely that Robert is happy that his mansion has been restored, since he may still be there in spirit. As this haunted place points out, Robert Sayre outlived 6 of his children, a stepson and 3 of his wives. Of those 10 deaths, 8 of them happened in the mansion itself. And it seems as though someone from the Sayre family is haunting it, even if it's not Robert. According to this haunted place, guests staying in room 23 have reported seeing the apparition of a woman brushing her hair in the bathroom mirror. Room 23 was originally the bedchamber of all 4 of Robert's wives. So it's been sort of a mystery which Miss Sayre it might be. During an episode of Ghost Hunters called the Sayre Spectres, the team attempted to narrow it down. They made the mistake of referring to Mary Bradford as wife Mary number 2, which didn't sit too well with the female spirit in the house, leading them to believe that the woman in the mirror is most likely Mary Bradford. But there also seems to be the spirits of children in the house, especially in room 32, which was once the nursery. Visitors have reported feeling a tugging on their clothes, as if a small child is trying to get their attention. They've also experienced cold spots in the room, and have seen shadows move across the walls that don't seem to have a logical explanation, like car headlights. In some cases, they've even seen a dark shadow come right out of the wall. There have also been some instances where objects have gone missing and then shown up again in weird places, leading people to believe that there's a child there who likes to play jokes. According to HistoricHotels.com, a plumber was fixing a toilet in the mansion one day when a washer that he had just put down disappeared. He eventually found it, though, all the way across the room and under the bath mat. Another common complaint is that televisions in the guest rooms will suddenly shut off by themselves. Another trick that a child might like to play. Sometimes it's enough for guests to check out in the middle of the night. There's been some speculation that one of the children's spirits is Cecil, but since Cecil passed away when he was just a year old, it seems rather unlikely that it's him manipulating the TVs and tugging on clothing. But it could be Francis Rodolphus, another of Robert's children. Francis was the son of Robert and the very first Mary Sayre. He died in 1864, at just 4 years old. But there's also stories of a shadow person in the basement, and that's where Jay and Sherry of Ghost Hunters went to look for Robert. In the episode, they comment on how the area that they were set up in was once Robert's wine cellar. Then they point out the various devices that they've set up, including a device that will light up green for yes and red for no. They started off their questioning by asking if there are any spirits from the nearby cemetery, and the device immediately lit up red. Then they asked if Francis Rodolphus was in the room, and that they knew he once liked to play down in the cellar. It also lit up red. Finally, they asked if Robert himself is there, and the device lit up green right away. Jay comments on how quick the response is, and he asks Robert if he can move closer to the devices. A low, breathy, deep male voice, a disembodied voice, clearly says, "Yeah." Jay actually jumps a little, since he's wearing a parabolic mic and headphones. But it was so loud that even Sherry heard it with just her ears and no amplification.
And I have to say, it was a creepy freaking voice.
Yeah, they played it over and over and over after that, and it was spooky as all hell.
It gave me, like, the goosebumps each time they played it.
Yeah, there's not too many times that I watch ghost hunting shows and then something really catches me where, like, ooh, that is creepy as all hell. But this was one of those moments.
Yes.
But they play it several times throughout the episode, so viewers can hear it multiple times. And overall, it sounds like a very tired man who has spent a lot of years alone. Almost as if he's been walking the halls of his mansion for a very, very long time. Which, of course, he probably has.
Right.
The Sayre Mansion leans into their haunted reputation in a big way, offering paranormal packages that include a 4-course meal, overnight stay, and an investigation led by the Lehigh Paranormal Society. They also offer 60-minute ghost tours that can end with you staying in room 11, which was Robert's former office, or room 23 with the hair-brushing Miss Sayre, for just an additional $99. Which I guess isn't that bad for a B&B.
Not at all. That's actually quite cheap. You get good food, hopefully a comfy bed, and some ghosts.
Yeah, it'd be fun as all hell to set up a EVP recorder and perhaps catch that voice again in the wine cellar.
Yeah. Although, I don't know. If I heard it in real life, I would get the goosebumps, but I probably would cry.
Yeah, you probably would.
I wouldn't run away, but I would sit there with tears streaming down my face because when I hear things like that, that's what happens to me.
Well, it's like our EVP at the Tilly Pierce house in Gettysburg.
Yeah.
That was creepy as all hell.
Yeah.
And we woke up to that. It was in real time we heard it, and we caught it on the EVP recorder, which we shared with Jim Harold.
Yes.
And there were no children in that place at that time. There was only 2 other couples. They had went to bed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We checked everything right after we heard it. But something literally shook or turned the doorknob on our room, rattled the door, and then walked through with like heavy boots.
Yes.
And it was a little startling, but I went right back to sleep after.
We did. Which is strange. You would think we would have been up all night, but no, we did. We both went back to sleep very quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to explain that one. That one was definitely weird. And we caught a voice there, too. We caught the voice saying mama multiple times.
Right. We have that on audio.
Yeah.
Quite a few times.
Yeah. So the Sayre Mansion might be a place that, we need to check out the next time we go to Pennsylvania.
This is true.
Yeah, we'll have to see how far it is from Gettysburg.
Yeah. But like we always say, if you want to know more about tonight's stories, go ahead and check out our show notes. They're a great jumping off point. And we do leave quite a bit of the history out because we could go on for hours and hours. And this leaves you with something to delve into deeper yourself.
Yes. And while you're at it, you could look up the 87 other possible contenders for who the real Shakespeare might be, if you are so inclined to believe that Shakespeare didn't write his own stuff.
I am so inclined
to
think that he did not write his own material.
Really? I don't know. I'm on the fence. I don't know. I could be swayed either way if I had some sort of proof.
Well, I don't know. I kind of tend to believe that maybe he didn't write all of his own stuff. Perhaps he did have a ghostwriter. Maybe he wrote some of it, but who knows?
I know. It's weird.
We'll never know.
No, we will never know. But that means other authors can write great books, speculating, creating their own characters, and creating their own stories on who it could be.
If they're actually writing them. Or they too have hired a ghostwriter.
Right.
You never know. You don't know what to believe anymore. Especially these days of AI. It's becoming harder and harder to discern between anything anymore. What's real and what isn't.
Unless you know the real person and how they write on a daily basis, then you can tell the difference. But no, you can't tell the difference if you don't know a person's writing.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode.
It does.
Got anything more you'd like to say?
No.
Any more corrections? Got everything right?
I hope so.
All right, we'll see all you fellow wanderers next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.